should I join a team? That's our hook right now. This is the number one question that I get from new riders at this time of the year. And I was going to make this as part of Cap 4 questions. And then I was like, this is a good discussion because we both have different athletes. We've both been on teams that have been great, that have been okay, that we all started as Cap 5. We all started by ourselves, and we all have that thing where it's like, hey, these people asked me to be on their team. You don't really know what to expect. So this exact question came in. I'm going to read this, and then we can kind of talk about this he brought up something that's, I think, interesting that I never even considered, but is very much down the line of how people think now when we talk about how much more like focused people are with training, I think, before they even get into racing. But here's the question. Okay, hey, people on 2 teams have talked to me about racing with them the next season, and I thought you'd be a good person to ask. I'm just getting back into cycling after 15 years, so I'm super flattered that people would even want me to race with them. It seems like there's a wide range of experience and fitness on both teams, so I could definitely learn plenty and ride with people much faster than myself. In your opinion, is there a good reason to choose one over the other? One thing I've been thinking of, though, is I want to get fast and progress quickly and be able to do the workouts that my coach prescribes without feeling obligated to do every team ride that I get invited to, and I know they have a lot. So maybe I shouldn't even think about joining a team. Any input you could give me would be much appreciated. So curious, what jumps out to you on that?
I mean, I guess first of all, lots of team rides. That's definitely the first thing that jumps out. Like that's the kind of like turning point question. Is that something that's going to really help you grow your fitness? So he's starting the question with, I know I need to do these workouts to get better. I know I need to follow the plan to get better. Will I be able to follow the plan if I join the team, or is that going to make me just not as strong of an athlete? Yeah. But he also wants the leadership and the guidance. So it's where are you going to strike that balance?
How do you find that balance? Yeah. And I think it was interesting. Like I was thinking back to when I first joined a team, I don't even think I had a coach yet. So my brain wasn't really there. I think it's interesting that a lot of people, and shout out to the guys at like Trainer Road, they've kind of like gotten newbies onto plans ASAP, which I don't know if I totally agree with. A lot of times I don't want to say I don't agree with. A lot of times when someone's new and they're like, I need to start training, it's like, dude, ride consistently. That's actually going to be pillar one when we have the other conversation of like, we've been making what is our coaching methodology. Whatever you do, it's got to be consistent. So I think Trainer Road is really good and it gets people on a schedule. But I just thought it was really interesting. Like he's already thinking about his own training versus the team aspect of it. I'm curious, if you had to give 1 point to people when deciding if they should join a specific team, what would you say to them? If there was only one thing that they could pick out and they could decide based on that. Okay.
I guess no, let me back up one. Make sure you have your personal goals in line before saying I need a group of people around me to ride a bike.
So I go even simpler. Mine is, would you hang out with these people if you weren't riding a bike together? So like the chemistry aspect. Before you even start thinking about like, these are questions that I think they would ask, but it's like, do you like these people? And I think one reason that maybe this is really more a question when people are asking and making the decision from like, you're on a 4-5 team. And then there's kind of like that middle ground where it's like, well, maybe it's a 3-4-5 team. And then it's like, okay, is there a 1-2-3 team, or is it a 3 only team, or is it a 1-2 team? And when you're going from like 3 to 1-2, where then all of a sudden there's stuff that comes with it, I think that's when people get like sidetracked. They're like, oh, well, these guys are total douchebags, but I get a free bike. Bad decision. Always ends badly. Like, gotta really like the people, gotta want to hang out with them, because you're going to be spending your weekends with them, and you're going to be, putting your time out there for your teammate to win at some points. And it's like, if you don't like the guys, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. And what happens are you joining a team just to have a team? Like you register for a race, and it was like, team. Are you joining a team just to have something to put into that box? And I think it'd be a good point right here to rewind and say, we both came from the same mentor. Like Mike Minerva was both of our earliest cycling mentor. Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
Flex on this.
Well,
What?
well played. But I remember he said, I didn't want to join a team until I didn't even want to show up to races until I felt like I was strong enough. And that's kind of in retrospect, a silly thing. But he said, you don't need to join a team as a 5. Just go out and learn how to race your bike. There's no team tactics as a 5. It's just people trying to figure out how to not crash into each other. And like, what is a breakaway and all this so basic. But his advice, that's really great advice. Like, don't join a team just to put something in that box on Bike Reg. That doesn't make any sense. You have to really think like you want a sense of camaraderie. You want a team that's gonna have some sort of a schedule that's that talks often. I mean, I'd say worse than joining a team just for like stuff, it would be just joining a team to say I'm on a team,
Mm-hmm.
and that team makes you buy kits, and now you're on a team that's just making you pay for stuff, but you're not getting anything out of it.
So this is a good point too. There's clubs and there's teams. And I think one thing, so to your point, what I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you're talking about your personal goals versus the team goals, you need to look at, is this a team that races? If you're trying to get into racing and people don't race, like, it's not necessarily the best fit. Can be people's motivations are very different, and it's not like it's a bad scene, but it's just like you get on a team and you're like, oh, I'm still racing by myself, but I paid for these kits, and now people think I'm on a team, so they don't ask me to be on their team, and they're all race. It just, so like, make sure that you kind of know that. But even so, I wrote down a couple things, not to sidetrack that, but after it's like, hey, do you like the people? I think he made a good point of where are the riders on your level. There's a time where there's always like, you see a team and it's like, there's one guy who's just much better than everybody else. And maybe he hasn't found somewhere else to go, or maybe he just likes being the best on the team. But like when you get to that situation, like, you don't want to be the best person on your team. You're always looking for, other groups to join, which this guy I thought was really really on point, saying, hey, I want to have other people that I can learn from. I think that's important. And I think that's a life thing, right? Don't be the biggest fish in the tank. Look for other ways to grow. My Adobe just.
And early teams, when you're first getting into it, it's one thing to, if you want to learn the craft of racing, you probably want to learn, the very basics. If you've never done a winter of training, like, you want to have people around you doing that alongside you. You don't have to train with them every day, but you want to get on Strava and be like, oh yeah, you had your 3-hour ride on Saturday. Did you do it? I did it too. Sweet. High five. Let's go eat some carbs. Like, you don't want to get yourself into a position where people make these plans and there's a lack of follow through too. Cause that's something that's frustrated, I think, us both throughout our cycling careers as well. That's just tricky early on. It's not as much of an issue once you get higher into the categories, because people take it seriously. That's the only way pillar number 1, consistency. You don't get to the higher categories without pillar number 1.
Right.
So do you want community or do you want racing team? Like, it's great to have both of those things, but it's not necessarily easy or realistic to think you'll always have both of those things.
Yeah. And I think the community aspect is a huge reason to join a team. I think that it's, having people to go race with, having people to go ride with. I think even though, the riding piece for me was never, like, the training together piece was never as important for me as the racing together piece, because there's going to be people in your city that there's the big group rides, there's, and everybody joins together and rides, and you end up training with people of your skill level. So it doesn't matter if you're on different teams. I mean, when I was in Rochester, I trained with people that, Cat 1s, Cat 2s, good Cat 3s. Most of the time we weren't on the same team. Didn't matter. Sometimes then that, what's that?
Like us, like when I was like a 3 or 2, I was still 3, and you started taking me out on rides. We weren't on the same team, but like we had the same objective, training.
Yeah. And then that's who and then it's like goes back to the first question. Would you hang out with this person when you're off the bike, and you build friendships, and then you become teammates down the road? And I think that's really like, look for group rides. Let's back it up. I'd almost say join a team, but really if you can do group rides with people of your skill level and better, then that's going to set you down the road ahead of the 8 ball, because you're going to get better by riding with faster people, period. The camaraderie, and I just not to knock it, but it is everywhere. The club environment where it's like, hey, there's 40 of us, we all buy the same kit, we're scattered throughout in ability. You're really not helping anybody, because the guys who are too slow can't keep up with the guys that are fast. The guys that are fast are not riding fast enough. And it's just this like big blob on the road that it's good for camaraderie, but for getting faster and developing as a bike racer and just a cyclist in general, I think it kind of holds people back. But, that's more the social side, and that's a great thing. But just beware, that might be what you're joining. So I think a big question to ask is, and maybe this is more towards Cat 3s, 2s, and 1s, like what races are you required to do? And simply, what are the requirements? Make sure that this fits with your lifestyle, with your partner's life, with your family. You're going to want to do a ton of races, but just make sure it's realistic. Don't sign on to a team and then be flaky. That is the second thing I usually tell people. Like, just make sure you can make the commitments. I don't know. What would you?
The one that has to follow through for sure. Yeah. That's not a fun feeling when it's like you've been going for this target 6 months away, and you're like a couple weeks out, and all of a sudden you start to get that hinting, like, wait, are they backing out of this? Like that stinks. And we're talking about amateur sports, so it's tricky, and life is a thing, but like, be an adult and figure out what you're getting yourself into and follow through. I think that's important.
I think that is important. I think it is. It's going to happen when you get on a team. You got to always realize, like, one person's probably going to be MIA for the season. Like, it's just things come up, and people are like, I decided to go back to grad school. I'm not riding anymore. Like, guess what? We're moving, and sometimes you're like, wait, how did you not see this coming? And some people just don't think things through. And some human beings have no problem flaking on people. So you got to be okay with that. Like, you have this big goal, make sure it aligns with like your team goals. Are there team races? What's your role for that race? And kind of try to keep that in line with everything. There's other things very obvious questions, like this guy had brought up the team rides. What team rides do you have? Do you have to be there every weekend? If so, I don't know if you'd want to do that, because you probably want to ride with other people in your city that are on the team. Who runs the team? Do you like this person? Don't join for team discount. We hit on that. And I think another thing that's big is team reputation. You might have to ask around about that, but if you don't know the team and they've only approached you, I would ask around. When you hear of this team's name, what do you think of? Because there are teams that everybody else hates. And so when you're going to go after your own personal goals, people on other teams won't work with you because they don't like the team. Like, the blob can have a bad reputation. Avoid those groups unless if there's a reason why you need to race with them, I guess that's just like crappy life luck, but I really can't think of a reason. Even if you live in the same town, race with other people unless you love those people. One other
it's interesting.
Go ahead.
as almost like a personal aside, I think, we both came from the Genesee Valley Cycling Club. It was a cycling club with many members, but also had many teams. And there was there were actual individual teams within that club. And I don't know why that isn't really more of a thing anymore. Or isn't, maybe that was just a regional thing. But I would love to see that start happening again, where it's like maybe there needs to be these big team clubs. That's fine, but have your 5 guys that you're trying, maybe only 4 or only 3 of them end up being full gas all season, but at least you have a little unit to learn the craft with, and not just, oh well, I got to ask the one fast guy who I can't really relate to yet because he's done 70 races and I've done 6 races. And a lot of what their capacity to understand racing is going to be just really different than yours, because as a beginner you're digesting a lot of things that they're way beyond. I think that's an element too. Like, if you have to join a club, make sure that there's going to be that little unit within that club that you feel motivated to contribute towards.
Yeah, that you belong with. I mean, I think, and for people that don't know Genesee Valley Cycling Club, I remember Minerva telling us, like, this is not normal. There were 250 or 220 members with probably about 14 or 15 teams within that. So there were a couple like Cap 4 or 5 teams that people would join on to. I joined one, and Minerva was just joining back on. And my kind of story through teaming was, then I was a 4, and Minerva was going to start Minerva Design, promoting his design company. And I'd asked him if I could be on it, and Drew Scholes was going to be like, he was the hitter. He was the Cap 3. And then we formed as Minerva Design, and then we started getting sponsors. And then when we were just racing, we were like picking up other people. Like, we met Andrew, and I met him at Green Mountain, and Botzik at a race who was down in Ithaca. And, eventually within our little like GVCC ecosystem, it was like, well, MVP is the squad. And they kind of had a full roster. Todd was doing his own thing with them. And we were like, let's be the next 1-2 team. And I think that, you make a good point. It would be awesome if that happened, because it kind of allowed the team to grow as we upgraded within a club, as opposed to having a club get dysfunctional when people are upgrading and it's leaving people out. And that's sort of what I felt like with I Am Racing. Great group of people, but I was there like jumping in, being like, okay, I'm moving to Nashville. Like, this is a big city. We're going to come on the scene. We're going to have hit squads like Chicago, Atlanta. Like, people are going to know what's up. And people were like, Dad, no, that's not what we do here. And I was like, oh, well, what let's have our group that does that. And that mindset wasn't really flowing there, which is cool. They were just doing something different than I had hoped to do. And I think that if it was a different type of like, okay, let's have a team within I Am Racing. Let's have 3 teams, and then maybe eventually just gets bigger. I mean, you're in a huge city. Why not? That would be interesting. I wonder,
Yeah. It's like, is there a flaw in the way USAC presents the whole team and club element to racing? Maybe there's just something in the root of it all that's a little bit confused, that somehow Genesee Valley Cycling Club didn't get caught underneath.
I'm ask them what the story is with that. I've never really thought about that more. We sort of talked about, hey Chris.
Sorry.
That's okay. We sort of talked about when we're talking about stuff, there's also, and this kind of goes to what we were just talking about, a team within the club, starting a team and understanding the budget and what you need to do. And I think people should really watch the interview with Andy Chastain, who talks about making relationships and how to forge your own way, not in your career, but in building a squad. But I remember when I talked to you, and you had made the comment to me like, hey, we're starting this group up. I think we might get like $5,000. And I was like, so that's one stage race. And you were like, damn, now that I add it up, like, yeah, or $1,000, $2,000 or whatever it was. People when you don't do it, like, you don't realize how quick the money goes. And like, that's what I first thought. Like, okay, we'll get $5,000, we'll buy some kits. And then you like, wait, I guess we can't go to any races then. And so like, people should think about a budget and what it really takes to really put on a team that can provide something that people want to be a part of, so that you don't let people down. And I think a lot of cyclists have been on teams where they promise you the world and you join and then you don't get anything. And it's like, that's really sour. And my other comment to that was, if you're starting something and you're following kind of what Andy talks about, make sure you bring value to the companies that you partner with, because then you won't feel like you're just taking their money for an amateur hobby. You're really going to believe that you guys can help their business grow. And I think that is so important, because nobody wants to get a check and have, 10 people at a business be like, wow, that was a waste of money. Figure out ways beforehand, before starting the team, or as you start the team, like, what's our like story going to be, and how can our story help brand XYZ really grow? Why do we exist? And I don't know, I think it's a really fun process that I think a lot of people could have, but some people just don't. It seems like it's going to be a big daunting task and it's a lot of work, but it's super rewarding to put a group of people together that are out on the road or gravel or whatever, representing something bigger than themselves. So kind of goes back, like, learn to race on your own, but have the goal of being part of a team. I mean, it's a great freaking feeling.
Yeah, so bigger than yourself. That's pushing for that. That always is a huge motivator for me. I like training, but when it comes to, we plan this season and there's this A race and it's like, we're doing this. And it's like, okay, we're doing this. I'm not going to be the letdown. Like, I'm not going to not ride my bike. Sometimes you get sick, sometimes you get injured, but like having a core of people that, you're pushing to be your best for the group, that's so huge.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's going to make you go out when it's 48 and you're like, 3 hours seems good enough. And you like think of your teammate finishing their ride and you're like, okay, I'm going to get in whatever else you had planned to get in, and you go do it. So I think this is good. I think, let me actually look at this guy's question again real quickly. I think we hit all the points, but when I think about it, to his main question, is there a good reason to join one over the other? Do you like the people? Do your goals personally align with them as a club or team? So figure that out. What are the requirements to joining the team? What do you like and not like about the team? What's their reputation? Ignore the discounts and understand like their schedule and their flow. When are the team rides? Again, what are the required races? What's expected of you? You do not want to flake on them, and you want them to not flake on you. So it's a two-way street for sure. Did I miss anything or add any highlights that we should add for people?
No, I think that's right on the money.
Cool. So I think join teams to this guy if you can check off those boxes. And appreciate your input, and I look forward to our next video.
Cool. Good to see you.
See you, man.